Hi friends, I hope everyone's doing well. This high contrast collage is the inspiration for the collages I'll be creating in this video. I made it in my last video. I'll link that video in the description area if you're interested in watching it. I'll discuss supplies and designs in each collage section, so let's get started. I found this art journal in my stash that I only used twice. It has 60-pound paper for the signatures, which is lightweight, but it should be fine. I'll be working in it for all the collages today. For this first high contrast collage, I'm painting a solid ground with Blick's matte acrylic paint and red light. I brought out white paint as well in case the red light paint isn't light enough. Also, I have pink deep along with the white that may be used to mix more paint if there isn't enough paint in the red light bottle to cover the ground. The collage papers are mostly dark blue and dark green with some mid-tone papers in these colors for contrast. Other supplies are glue sticks, which I'll use to glue the papers for all the collages. And I have scissors and a paintbrush. Let's get started by painting the ground. I'm using a Princeton Velvet Touch 3/4 inch flat brush. To protect the other pages in this journal while I'm painting the ground, I put paper behind the page I'm working on and the previous page. I put a dab of the red light paint to see what the color looks like on paper. I know it may dry darker. It looks a bit darker than I want, so I'm adding some white paint. The ground dried much darker than I wanted, even though I added some white paint. I'm painting another much lighter layer that's mostly white with a bit of the red light paint. Now that the ground is the correct color, I'm starting by adding the base or foundation layer of the collage papers. My plan is to add dark papers, then come in with mid-tone papers for contrast. As I'm collaging, I'm being mindful to leave some of the light pink ground showing. This dark green monoprinted paper doesn't have a pattern, but it has good texture that I find appealing. I'll be using pattern and solid color papers in this collage. This teal green paper has a nice pattern that has dark and mid-tone values. I'm considering it a mid-tone paper because that's the dominant value. I decided on this placement because I like that it's a bit lighter than the other side. It adds a nice contrast against the dark blue element. As you can see, I'm starting to cut the papers into different sizes and shapes. I will wait until near the end to add smaller shapes. I consider smaller shapes as accents. Initially, I was going to use the cruciform composition, but I decided to modify the shape a bit. I like the horizontal dark green element in juxtaposition to the other elements that will be vertical. This blue with white circle pattern is another mid-tone paper. I really like the monoprinted pattern in it. If you have watched my videos before, you've seen this pattern along with the monoprinted plaid and swirl patterns. All of these are my go-to patterns for collaging. Now I'm starting to add smaller mid-tone accent papers. Having a variety of sizes and shapes makes the collage pleasing to look at. I'm unsure if this is finished. I may revisit it later. Let's go on to the next collage. I pulled papers in shades of burgundy, red, brown, and scraps of brown envelopes. For this collage, I'll be painting the solid ground with Blake's matte acrylic paint and green blue light. I've been creating collages with bright colors recently, so it's nice to bring out some darker earthy colors. Looking back, the ground color should have been a tad lighter, but it will work. My design idea for this collage is to have a horizontal composition. I'm starting by adding large elements in dark brown and burgundy to map out the main horizontal structure. Instead of cutting straight angles, I think it's an interesting design to have these elements cut at a slight angle. I really love the colors and patterns that are going on in this burgundy paper. It was made while monoprinting. If I remember correctly, it's the third pass on the gel plate, meaning there was paint remnants from the other two pulls. Sometimes I'm more intrigued by the ghost prints than the original prints. Now it's time to add smaller papers and mid-tone value papers. This mid-tone burgundy paper is another ghost print. You can see a faint plaid underneath the wavy line pattern. For the following patterns, the size will be much smaller than the three main elements. Again, I'm being mindful of leaving some of the ground showing. I'm considering this brown and white paper mid-tone. The white areas lighten up the paper as a whole. I love how the paper looks blurry. It's another ghost print. This envelope I'm considering a mid-tone value. Using all sorts of envelopes in your collage practice is a great way to add color and pattern. Also a good way to recycle. Instead of three separate horizontal groupings, I prefer that the papers overlap each other. I think it makes the collage more cohesive. This is another monoprinted paper. It may seem out of place to include magenta, but I thought it'd be a good mid-tone value. Also, I have a hard time not including some bright colors into collages I create. I really love the contrast of pattern papers and solid papers. It gives the collage an interesting look. Now I'm finishing up the collage by adding smaller and thinner papers as accents. Here's the finished collage. I'm happy with the way it turned out. Let's go on to the final collage. I pulled papers in shades of black and gray for this collage. I'll be using Blake's matte acrylic paint and Celadon for the ground, and if I need to lighten it up, I kept out the white paint. Once again, the ground dried darker than I wanted. I really need to let the test patch dry completely before painting the ground. Anyway, I'm mixing the color lighter than I want since I know it'll dry a bit darker. Another thought is since the paper in this journal is lightweight, it's 60 pounds, adding another layer of paint will strengthen the page. Now this is the color I want for the ground. I have used this solid black monoprinted paper before in a collage. I like that it has some texture to it. This happens when you monoprint a solid color. I want to cut a large piece of it. I want this collage to be bold looking. This one was monoprinted as well, but it was printed on a page from an old book. You can get some unique ephemera with this type of paper and technique. The design is very expressive. I need to make a note to myself to create more of these types of ephemera. This paper will be cut large as well. I'm changing it up from the last two collages that had mid to smaller papers, so this one will have a different look. I'm considering the striped monoprinted paper as dark value, even though it has white in it. Since black is such a strong color, I think it reads as dark, not mid-tone. Since this collage is high contrast, I want to make sure the gray papers aren't too light leaning. Also, I'm starting to size down the papers at this point. I want to tie the larger elements together so this gray paper will be long enough to touch these two black papers. This wavy pattern paper has some sections that I would consider mid-tone. I don't want the section that has a lot of white showing. Here's the finished collage. I decided to keep the design simple but bold. I think there's enough contrast. Let's have a quick wrap up in the next section. You may have noticed this collage looks a bit different. Off camera, I decided to collage over those areas that had mid-tone value papers. In my opinion, there wasn't enough contrast within the collage area. Even though these new elements are brighter, I think it still works since each one is an accent, not a large piece of paper. I like this collage better with these new elements. This collage is my favorite out of the three. The composition is cohesive. I love the color combination. It makes me want to create more collages that have darker, muted colors. Very happy with the way this one turned out. This collage is simple, but I think it's successful. Another one with a color combination that I like. I think you can't go wrong with a collage with black ephemera, especially monoprinted black on an old book page. Very happy with this one. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video. Let me know if you have a favorite collage out of these 3. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. See you in the next one. Take care.